very important. It was my great pleasure to introduce our facilitator and my dear brother, George Hoguet. George is one of the founding members of the Earth Holder Sangha, and I have had the great pleasure of getting to know him through the Care-Taking Council, and he's such a dear friend and such an embodiment of what it means to live the Earth Holder practice. In George's bio, he said that love motivates his actions, and as someone who gets to know George well, I can say this is the deepest truth. It's so evident that his actions are motivated by deep love for the earth and all beings. With that, I will hand it over to George, who will be leading us today. Thank you, George. Thank you, friends.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here for one another, for this community. So what I'm going to do is offer a short intro statement, and then we'll have a guided meditation of 10 to 15 minutes or so, maybe 10 to 12 minutes. And that will be followed by a short talk or reflection, if you will. And because we want to allow plenty of time for our Dharma sharing in groups. And then also at the end, we have a chance to introduce ourselves and share with everyone where we're greeting everyone from. So the theme today is being a lotus in the sea of fire, or Bodhisattva call. The lotus is a sacred flower for Buddhists and Hindus as well. It symbolizes purity, beauty, majesty, grace, fertility, wealth, richness, knowledge, and serenity. And Thai also reminds us about suffering and the lotus. He said, no mud, no lotus. He said, most people are afraid of suffering, but suffering is a kind of mud to help the lotus flower of happiness grow. There can be no lotus flower without the mud. Without suffering, there's no happiness. So we shouldn't discriminate against the mud. We have to learn how to embrace and cradle our own suffering and the suffering of the world with a lot of tenderness. So please get comfortable, if you will, in a nice stable position for sitting meditation. And I'm going to be offering some guided thoughts throughout our sitting. With posture upright and stable, we are seated at the foot of the Bodhi tree. Body, speech, and mind are one. In stillness there is no more thought of right and wrong. Our mind and body dwell in perfect mindfulness. We rediscover our original nature, leaving the shore of illusion behind. Noble Sangha, diligently bring your mind into meditation. Namo Shakyamunai Buddhaya.
Namo Shakyamunai Buddhaya.
Namo Shakyamunai Buddhaya.
Namo Shakyamuni Buddhaya.
Namo Shakyamuni Buddhaya.
Namo
In touch with the flower, I breathe in. In touch with the scent and the beauty of the flower, I breathe out. Flower, beauty, and scent. In touch with the cloud in the flower, I breathe in, knowing that without the cloud, there would be no flower. I breathe out. Cloud in the flower, without cloud, no flower. In touch with consciousness in the flower, I breathe in, knowing that without consciousness, there would be no flower. I breathe out. Consciousness in the flower, without consciousness, no flower. Seeing the impermanence of the flower, I breathe in. Seeing the flower on the way to the garbage, I breathe out. Flower impermanent. Flower turning into garbage. In touch with the garbage, I breathe in. In touch with the impurity and smell of garbage, I breathe out. Garbage, impurity, and smell. In touch with the garbage arising from the 6 elements, I breathe in. Smiling to the 6 elements in the garbage and in me, I breathe out. Garbage from 6 elements, smiling. Breathing in with the fire siren ending, I smile. Breathing out. This is our world. Fire siren ending. Prayers. In touch with consciousness in the garbage, I breathe in. Knowing that without discriminating consciousness, there would be no garbage. I breathe out. Consciousness in the garbage. Without discriminating consciousness, no garbage. Breathing in, no mud, no lotus. Breathing out, peace. No mud, no lotus, peace. Welcome again, everyone. I live across the street from a fire station. Sorry about that. So welcome back. I'd like to share some thoughts on being a lotus in today's sea of fire. In June 1965, about a month after a young monk self-immolated, and 2 years after the now infamous photograph of Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh. So in that period of time, Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a letter to Martin Luther King about these self-immolations. And in his letter, he tried to explain why and how these monks could have made such a painful, horrific sacrifice to call attention to the suffering in the Vietnamese War. And King, like other Americans, had been confused and disturbed by those images and viewed them as suicides, demonstrating what they thought was a lack or loss, I should say, of spiritual hope. Eventually, though, through reading Thay's letter and with the subsequent meetings with Thay, Martin Luther King came to understand the courage, strength, and self-sacrifice of these monks and saw it much like Christ had given himself on the cross. In that same year, 1965, Thay also published Vietnam, Lotus in a Sea of Fire, a book he later spoke of in speaking about the history of the Order of Interbeing. And he said, and I'm quoting, "The war in Vietnam was raging. It was an ocean of fire. We were killing each other there. We allowed American bombers to come and destroy our forests, our people. We allowed weapons from China and Russia to come. But Buddhism was trying to do something. The peace movement in Vietnam badly needed international support, but you," he meant Americans, "could not hear us over there. So sometimes we had to burn ourselves alive to tell you that we didn't want this war. Buddhism was like a flower lotus flower trying to survive in an ocean of fire. The book Lotus in a Sea of Fire is actually a rather analytical treatise on the treacherous political situation in Vietnam at that time, including the role of communism, capitalism, Catholicism, Buddhism. It does, however, open with a very telling poem from an 11th century Vietnamese Zen monk. The poem says, "The jade burned on the mountain retains its natural color. The lotus, blooming in the furnace, does not lose its freshness." Can we maintain our freshness today in a world that is on fire with climate chaos, nationalism, racism and fear, sexism and war? Can we be both torches burning brightly and the beauty and the serenity of the lotus flowers? That is our challenge, and it is, in my humble opinion, the essence and the ground of our earth-holding community. It is our unique gift to be in action, passionately, helping to wake others up while also being still and at peace. Thich has never wanted anyone to literally burn themselves alive for any cause. And yet he also tells us, allow yourself to be a torch and allow the flame of your torch to be transmitted to other torches. Participating like that, you can help peace and joy grow in the world. In a recent discussion in the Supreme Court about women's rights, Judge Clarence Thomas, one of the judges whom we rarely hear from, shared his opinion in favor of restricting a woman's right to choose. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the eldest and perhaps the most respected member of the court, commented that Thomas's comments offered more heat than light. She speaks her mind. Lots of passion, maybe from Thomas, but perhaps not so much insight and wisdom into the Constitution. We are called as Bodhisattvas in the Earth Holder community to be torches offering more light than heat, more wisdom and insight than anger and judgments and blaming. Many of us are very passionate, especially about taking action to stop or slow the evolving climate chaos and the suffering and injustice associated with it. And as a grandfather of 6 young ones, I truly appreciate and thank you for your passion. The question comes back to me, can we be both a torch and a lotus at the same time? Can we embrace the energy of our passion arising from our love and caring and also hold on to and offer the beauty of the lotus? I say that the answer is yes, we can do both. Because I've already seen this in many of you. I've been inspired by many of you. Taking action, lighting the way for others, and holding the beauty and simplicity of our practice in a way that brings peace, serenity, comfort, and much hope. I was struck by when Thich said about the situation in Vietnam that Buddhism was like a lotus flower trying to survive in an ocean of fire. In 1965 in Vietnam and also in many parts of Southeast Asia, Buddhism was the dominant spiritual path, a path of beauty, simplicity, community, generosity, respect, and compassion. The lotus is its appropriate symbol in my mind. Buddhism was the nourishment of 2,500 years, and its openness, kindness, and selflessness was struggling to be honored by a people who were being blown apart. Thich's real call to them then was for faith, a call for those who lived true to those teachings to carry on, to be honorable, to remain nonviolent, to remain loving. Could they survive and hold on to that in their sea of fire? We are in a sea of fire today in the US, and which is no less dangerous and debilitating. In fact, we know it's going to get worse. Exponential population growth combined with climate change impacts is already outstripping our food sources. And refugees are fleeing all over the planet, creating immigration nightmares and closed borders. Fear is real, and fear is also being used to control people. I've come to believe that Buddhism, or at least the tenets of Buddhism as we are practicing them in Thai's tradition, is critically needed in our world. We need peace, calmness, and collaboration to solve our problems together. Without those qualities, humanity will fail. Calls for peace, of course, are not being easily heard over the roaring voice of fear and greed shouting via our media. And calling for peace is often even denigrated as socialism. So what is being heard for peace? Being is being heard. Being the practice is being heard, actually. Walking mindfully for peace or sitting silently in meditation at rallies is actually being heard. Kindness without expectation of return is being heard. The kind act may be seen via our eyes, but it is actually heard through our hearts and by more folks than we know. Last week I was riding home on a bus, sitting toward the front, and an elderly man got on. The bus was packed and folks were already standing in the aisle. The man stood in front of me, facing away towards the seats reserved for the elderly and disabled, which were full of younger people, frankly. I rose and said, "Sir, please have this seat." He did. I was happy. Frankly, I was the only white person on the bus, including the elderly man, and I saw some shocked faces. I didn't offer my seat to be a hero or to make a statement. It was just the right thing to do. Looking back, I'm hoping that such a small act as that opened some minds and maybe helped reduce the racial divide between us. And I know I have a long way to go to reduce that divide for myself. So being a lotus that is shining brightly like a torch, a fire with the solidity and serenity of our practice, is what I've come to believe offers ourselves, our families, our neighbors and friends and grandchildren of all species the best we can give. And we hold that lotus torch with much beauty and light as we also engage, take compassionate, direct action in helping to protect each other and our beings and the earth itself. We are called to act, to be engaged, even politically, but we're called to do so with the freshness of that lotus in the furnace. So appropriately, for we eco-conscious earth holders, we'll see if this works, I envision us, let's see. I envision us as, hope you're seeing this. Nope, that's the wrong slide. Oh, there we are. I envision us as solar-powered lotuses. Lotus, now that I have this up, I can't read my notes. This is how it works, guys. I'm getting there. Yeah, so I see us as solar-powered lotuses shining brightly and beautifully amidst this sea of fire, offering our light of direction, of right view, but without generating the heat of divisiveness, of otherness. And I want one of these lamps. That is us. We are anchored deep in the mud of suffering and full awareness of it all, as our fourth mindfulness training calls us to be. But our light is strong, as is our faith and confidence in the practice. Thich calls us to faith again, and we need that power of faith today in our sea of fire. So our lotus has many petals, with the practice at the center, our practice at the seed pod and reductive center, reproductive center of the flower that offers its continuation. And I offer many thanks to Dharma teacher John Bell from Massachusetts, who was on our call, who visualized this framework for our growth and for the realization of the light we wish to offer in the Earth Holder community. And as I see John's face, I want to make one other statement right here that has to do with being the practice. A couple of years back, John and Brother Fulfillment, Brother Fatman, went to New York City to help meet other Buddhists, to offer a statement to the UN together in person. And they sat down to have a meeting before that. And I was told later that the other Buddhists in the group from other traditions just kind of jumped into the meeting. And John and Brother Fatman said, brothers and sisters, are we not going to just kind of sit for a minute and be with each other and stop and be conscious of that? So that's part of it too. So these petals are very beautiful. They're learning facts of the suffering and the forces that are in our society, understanding them. Healing ourselves, discovering our own suffering and the feelings of powerlessness that come from our early life. Visioning a better world that we want for our, looking forward. Taking the individual actions, such as outlined in our Earth Peace Treaty sheet, and also such as engaging in reading and exploring our own hidden biases and racism. And engaging mindfully in collective action, compassionate, direct action, where most importantly, our practice, our mindful way of being in that action, our stillness and equanimity, may be the greatest contribution to those we hope will hear, understand, and act on our requests, our demands. So it comes back to us as bodhisattvas of light, of bodhisattvas of lotus hearts, to preserve and protect the very ground of beauty, simplicity, generosity, and forgiveness that is Mother Earth and is our spiritual path. So hopefully I'm back. If I stop sharing my screen, did I stop sharing my screen? Are you seeing my screen? Okay. It's been a while since I've done this. So how can we do this? How can we specifically be this torch? In 2003, when Thai spoke to the US Congress, he came to the US and spoke to the Congress after the attacks of 9/11. The public broadcasting system, PBS, covered his visit, and he aired an interview with him, and I can send the link on that. He was asked what Buddhism had to say to people of other religions. Thai said, it is the concrete level of practice. We have the same teachings as them, but in Buddhism, there are more concrete tools. There are ways to transform the amount of suffering in our families and in our schools. We as practitioners of transformation and healing, we know how to do it, how to help reduce the level of violence. So those tools are our practices, our breathing, our mindfulness trainings, our retreats and days of mindfulness, our gathas, and our mindfulness in everything we do daily. When we commit ourselves to do that, to have true diligence in our practices, that way of being shines out to those around us. We become torches and we become beautiful lotuses at the same time in today's sea of fire. That beauty and light is so needed today, and it is heard by those around us, even when we don't say a word. So may we shine brightly. And Stephanie, I will turn it back to you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, George. Just wanted to make a brief announcement on behalf of the Earth Holder Caretaking Council. I think many of you were on our April 14th call, and many of you are already a part of our Mindful Hub on Basecamp. But if you're not there already, we invite you to join us. The Basecamp Hub is a place where you can get more involved with different earth-holding activities. There's some different discussion topics going on, like Extinction Rebellion and regenerative culture. And George is one of the leaders of the Compassionate Direct Action group, which has been very active. So if you'd like to become a part of the Mindful Action Hub, you can email Simona, the Earth Holder Community Coordinator. So wonderful to be with you all, friends. So we will close our meeting for today, and we hope to see you again next month, and perhaps on Basecamp in the meantime. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.